It is 1978. You are asleep in your home in Sacramento, California. You believe you are safe. But a shadow is moving through your neighborhood. He watches your house. He learns your routine. And one night, when you are most vulnerable, he will slide open your window and step inside. For the next 40 years, no one will know his name. They will only know his crimes.
This is not a fictional story. This is the true story of one of the most terrifying criminals in American history. A man who vanished like a ghost. Welcome back to Lingo. My name is Mia.
And I'm Leo. Today, we are diving into the world of true crime to tell a story that is both terrifying and, in the end, incredibly hopeful.
We are telling the story of the Golden State Killer. It's a story about a crime spree that lasted for more than a decade, and a mystery that lasted for more than 40 years.
But it's also a story about how a new kind of technology, something many of us use for fun, finally caught a monster. By the end of this episode, you will understand the vocabulary of a criminal investigation, and you will have followed a complex, real-life mystery from beginning to end.
This is a dark story, but it has a powerful lesson. Are you ready?
Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Reign of Terror.
Our story begins in the 1970s in California. A series of strange and frightening crimes started to happen. It began with burglaries, someone breaking into houses to steal things. But then it became much worse.
The man would break into homes while people were sleeping. He was a serial offender, which means he committed the same type of crime again and again. He became known by many names, like the East Area Rapist and the Original Night Stalker.
He was incredibly careful. He wore a mask, he never left fingerprints. The media called him the Phantom. He created a climate of fear. People were buying guns, getting dogs, and barricading their doors. No one felt safe.
The police had very few clues. A clue is a piece of evidence or information used in the detection of a crime. They had descriptions of his voice, but they had no face and no name. The fear was a living thing in the community.
The crimes continued for years, moving from Northern to Southern California. And then, in 1986, they just stopped. The ghost disappeared.
He vanished. But he left behind a trail of victims and a mystery that haunted the police and the public for decades. The police had collected DNA from the crime scenes, but in the 1980s, DNA technology was very new. They couldn't do much with it.
Exactly. The files were put into boxes. The case grew old. It became what investigators call a cold case.
A cold case is a crime that has not been solved and is no longer being actively investigated. For years, it seemed like the Golden State Killer would never be identified. The ghost had won. Chapter 2: The Mind of a Predator.
Before we talk about how he was caught, let's try to understand the kind of person who could do these things. Criminal psychologists have studied this case for years, and they have a clear picture of his psychology.
What did they find? What was his mental condition?
The profile of the Golden State Killer points to a combination of extreme narcissism and possible psychopathy. Narcissism is a mental condition where a person has an inflated sense of their own importance and a deep need for excessive attention and admiration.
So he thought he was better and more important than everyone else.
Exactly. And for him, the crimes were not just about violence, they were about power and control. He enjoyed the fear he created. The media attention was like a trophy for him.
And what about psychopathy?
Psychopathy is a personality disorder characterized by a lack of empathy and remorse. A psychopath doesn't feel guilt for hurting others. They see people not as human beings with feelings, but as objects to be used for their own gratification.
That explains how he could be so cruel. He didn't feel the pain he was causing.
That's the expert consensus. And this psychological profile also explains how he was so successful at avoiding capture. He was meticulous in his planning.
Meticulous, what does that mean?
It means showing great attention to detail, very careful and precise. He would watch his victims for weeks, learning their schedules. He would sometimes break into their homes before the attack to unlock windows or hide weapons.
That is terrifying. It's a level of planning that is hard to imagine.
It shows a predator who was not acting on impulse. He was a patient, calculating hunter. Understanding this cold, narcissistic psychology is key to understanding how he could terrorize so many people for so long and then simply stop and live a normal life.
Chapter 3: The New Detectives.
Decades passed. The 1980s became the 1990s, then the 2000s. The world changed. The internet was born. Technology grew more powerful every year. And one of the most powerful new technologies was DNA analysis.
By the early 2000s, police could create a full DNA profile of the killer from the evidence they had saved. A DNA profile is like a unique genetic fingerprint.
They had the killer's profile, but they had nothing to compare it to. They checked it against all the criminal databases, but there was no match. A DNA match is when you find two profiles that are the same.
So they had his ghost in their computer, but they still didn't know his name. The case was still cold. But then a new kind of detective entered the story. Not a police officer, but a normal person.
Her name was Michelle McNamara, a writer. She became obsessed with the case. She gave the killer a new name, the Golden State Killer. She wrote a famous book about him, and her work brought new attention to this old forgotten case.
At the same time, a new hobby was becoming popular online: genealogy.
Genealogy is the study of families and the history of their relatives. People started using websites like 23andMe or Ancestry.com. They would send in their DNA, and the website would help them build their family tree and find distant relatives.
People did this for fun, to learn about their past. They had no idea they were building the tool that would finally catch a killer. Chapter 4: The Family Tree Trap.
In 2017, a team of investigators decided to try something radical, something that had never been done before. They decided to treat the killer's DNA not like a criminal's, but like a normal person's on a genealogy website.
So they uploaded the killer's DNA profile to a public genealogy database.
Exactly. They were not looking for the killer himself. They were looking for a relative, a cousin, a great-grandfather, anyone who shared some of his DNA.
And did they find someone?
They did. After months of searching, they found a distant relative, someone who was the killer's great-great-great-grandfather.
Wow. So they had a starting point.
Yes, from that one distant relative. The investigators started to build a huge family tree. They worked backwards and forwards through time, using historical records, birth certificates, and social media. They built a family tree with hundreds and hundreds of names.
And they were looking for a man who fit the profile: the right age, living in the right place, at the right time.
Precisely. After months of incredible detective work, they narrowed it down to just a few possible suspects. A suspect is a person thought to be guilty of a crime.
And one of those suspects was a man named Joseph James D'Angelo, an old man living a quiet life in a Sacramento suburb, a former police officer. Chapter 5: The Ghost Gets a Name.
The investigators now had a name and a face, but they needed to be 100% sure. They needed a direct DNA match.
So they needed to get his DNA, without him knowing they were watching him.
Yes. They conducted surveillance. They watched his house. They followed him. One day, D'Angelo went to a hobby store. After he left, an investigator secretly collected an item he had thrown in the trash.
And they tested the DNA on that item?
They did, and it was a match. The DNA from the trash was a perfect match to the DNA from the crime scenes from 40 years ago.
They had him. After 40 years, the ghost had a name.
In April 2018, the police arrested 72-year-old Joseph James D'Angelo.
The reign of terror was finally over.
Chapter 6: The Trial and the Voices. The arrest was a huge shock to the world. But for the survivors and the victims' families, it was the beginning of the end of a long nightmare.
That's right. The next step was the trial. A trial is the legal process in a court where a judge and jury decide if someone is guilty of a crime.
But D'Angelo was old. A full trial for all his crimes could take 10 years. The families wanted justice now. So the lawyers made a deal. D'Angelo would plead guilty to everything. He would admit his crimes.
In return, he would not get the death penalty. He would be sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole.
And in August 2020, the final part of the trial happened. The victims and their families were finally given a chance to speak directly to the killer in court. These are called victim impact statements.
For days, dozens of people stood up and shared their stories. They spoke about the parents, the siblings, and the children who were taken from them. One woman, the daughter of a murdered couple, said, "For 44 years, I have lived in fear. Now, it is your turn to be afraid."
Another survivor who was attacked in her home looked at him and said, "I have a beautiful life. You did not win. You did not destroy me."
The statements were full of pain, but also incredible strength. The families showed the world that they were not just victims. They were survivors.
At the end, the judge sentenced him. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. The ghost was finally locked away forever.
This story is a powerful example of how the world has changed. A secret that was safe for 40 years could not hide from modern technology.
It brings up big questions about privacy, doesn't it? Our genetic information is online. It can be used for good, like catching a killer, but it also means our family secrets are not so secret anymore.
It's a huge ethical conversation. But for the victims of the Golden State Killer, it meant one thing: justice. After decades of waiting, they finally got an answer.
Let's do a quick recap of the key vocabulary from this investigation.
A criminal who commits the same crime many times is a
Serial offender.
An old unsolved case is a
Cold case.
When two genetic profiles are the same, it's a
DNA match.
And the study of family history is
Genealogy.
You have learned the essential vocabulary of a true crime investigation.
So, what is our call to action for this week?
This was a heavy but important story. Your task for this week is to think about the theme of technology and privacy. Do you think it's okay for police to use public genealogy websites to solve crimes? There is no right or wrong answer. Share your opinion in the comments.
That is a great discussion topic. Thank you for taking us on that journey, Mia.
Thank you for listening. And thank you to our listeners for joining us. Make sure you subscribe, because next week we are doing something much more lighthearted. We are going to learn how to talk about our hobbies and free time.
Phew, I am ready for that. Until then, goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Happy and chill learning to all of you. Leo Mia Lingo.